What's up, guys? Mr. Cruz here to show you guys notes on one-step word problems. Now, with this, it's kind of what we've been going over with the one-step equations, where you draw your river, box up the variable, do the opposite on each side. Now, the thing that's going to be different about this is that we're going to have word problems, but it's not good enough just to solve it. Solving it is the easy part. But what we have to do is we have to turn it into an equation so that we can solve it. And I know for most of us, you're big brain enough to be able to just like do the math in your head or be able to figure out the answer without having the equation. But part of what we're going to be going over is being able to identify what equation matches the word problem. Well, at least with the assignment that you guys are going to do. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with this. All right, so first up, says Riverwalk Bike Rental Shop charges $20.50 per hour for renting a bike. Jessica paid $82 to rent a bike. How many hours did she pay to have the bike checked out? All right, so I'm going to underline this right here. This is important, $20.50, and $82 is important. Also, this word right here, per hour. If we remember from our verbal expressions that the word per means multiplication. Actually, it can mean multiplication and division. But in this case, it means multiplication because we start out with a smaller number and we end up with a bigger number. So solving it, again, is easy, but the important part is being able to create an equation that goes along with it. So in order to do this, I know that I have to have multiplication happening. I'm going to use the letter H to represent hours. So in this case, I know that $20.50 per hour. And if I find out how many hours she rented it for, that she ends up with $82. So we have the equation here. We're trying to find out how many hours she did this for, or she rented the bike for. So then this is the part where you would draw your river, you would box up your variable. Keep in mind that the H and the $250, they're being attached. They're next to each other. So that means that they're being multiplied. So I'm going to do the opposite, right? I'm going to divide instead. So I'm going to divide both sides by 250. Or not 250, but $20.50. All right, I'm going to do this off screen here. So 82 divided by $20.50, and that gives me 4. So how many hours did she rent her bike for? She rented it for just 4 hours. All right, on to the next one. All right, so this one. Benny sold half of his comics, half of his comic books. He now has 13. How many did he begin with? Now, another thing about this is finding out which number goes on which side of the equal sign. I typically like for us to be able to, when we're writing our equations or our expressions, our equations, that we kind of stick to like this typical format where like equals and then you're putting that number over here. In this case, he now has 13. That means that the final number is going to be 13. So then over here, we find out that he sold half of his comic books. So I need to write something that represents half of comic books. I'm going to use the letter C. And I know from, wow, that's a terrible C. I remember from verbal expressions that the word half means division. Specifically, it means dividing by 2. So his comic books divided by 2 equals 13. So now I draw my river, box up my variable, and since it's already being divided, I'm going to do the opposite, and I'm going to multiply it by 2 on both sides. So multiplying this one by 2, most of us can probably do this in our heads. I end up with C all by itself. So how many comic books did he start out with? He started out with 26. You guys can't tell I'm still sick, yo. This is ratchet. All right, so 26 comic books. That's it. Next one. It says Sarah's high school played 13 football games this year. The team won most of their games. They were defeated during 4 games. How many games did they win? In this one, since it says that they played a total of 13 football games, I'm going to put 13 on this side. So what I have to find out is how many games did they win. Now, you could probably just think, all right, 13 minus 4, blah, blah, blah. But we have to put an equation to it. So I'm going to use W to represent wins. And in this case, I'm going to do W plus 4 equals 13 because 4 represents the number of games that they lost. W represents the number of games that they won. So how many they won plus how many they lost gives me the total number of games that they played all year. So draw your river, box up your variable, subtract 4 on both sides because I'm left with plus 4. So once I do that, this right here should give me 9. So they won a total of 9 games that year. Remember that on this side, this is all going to cancel out, and W is going to be left by itself. All right. Good job. On to the next one. Bam. All right, next. Sally went to Lowe's and bought a hammer. While standing in line to check out, she also decided to buy herself a candy bar for $2. All right, so Sally is mad impulsive. We don't want to date Sally, right? We don't want to be with anybody like Sally because they're out here just blowing money. If her total came out to $13, how much did the hammer cost? So I'm going to use H to represent the hammer. And I'm going to put 13 because that's what the total came out to, right? All right. So I'm going to put H plus 2, right, equals 13. The hammer plus the $2 for the candy bar gives me $13 that she spent. Draw my river, box up my variable. I'm left with plus 2. So I'll do the opposite. I'm going to do minus 2. And then once I do that, cancel this out. H is by itself. And 13 minus 2 gives me 11. So then the hammer cost $11. Light work. All right, next. Keith spent half of his allowance going to the movies. What is his weekly allowance if he ended up with $11? So he spent half. That means I'm dividing by 2 at some point. So I'm going to just go ahead and do that right now. I know at some point I'm dividing by 2. And he ended with $11. So I'm going to put equals 11. So what am I putting up here? I'm going to use A to represent his allowance. So draw my river, box up my variable. I'm already dividing by 2, so I'm going to multiply by 2. Multiply by 2 on both sides. This is going to cancel out. It's not going to give me 4, right? I'm canceling it out because I did the opposite. And now I'm left with A by itself. Well, a flattened A, apparently. And then 11 times 2 gives me 22. Man, we so big brain over here. 7th grade for the win. All right. Next one. This one. Jason bought 9 new baseball trading cards to add to his collection. He now has 35 cards. How many cards did Jason start with? So he bought 9, which means that he added to his collection, right? So I'm going to do plus 9. And then it says that he now has 35. So I'm going to put equals 35. I'm going to use C to represent baseball card. So how many baseball cards he bought, or no, how many baseball cards he started out with, plus the 9 that he bought, equals 35. Draw my river, box up my variable. I'm left with 9. So I do the opposite. I'm left with plus 9. So I'm going to do the opposite and do minus 9. This is going to cancel out. 35 minus 9. Ooh, too big brain in here. All right, that is going to give me 26. Look, I could do that in my head, but my brain cells, like my body is too focused on trying to heal right now. All right, so C equals 26. Too easy. I'm saying this is too easy. All right. All right, if you already understand what we're going over, you can go ahead and skip the rest of these notes. If you're still confused and you're still not able to figure it out on your own, I want you guys to follow along with me. Or if you want to, pause it right here, read this question for yourself, and then try to figure out the answer. Not just the answer, but figure out the equation that matches it. So we'll stop it right now, but I'm going to keep going. But I'm giving you permission now to move along to the next item if you already understand what you're going through. If you already understand what we're doing here. All right. For those of you guys who are going to stick around, we're just going to do a couple more examples and then we'll be done. We'll do like 3 or 4 more. This one says Mary spent $78 at the bookstore. If she bought the same 3 books for her friends, how much did each book cost? All right. So she spent $78. So I'm going to take that to mean that that's the final total, right? That's the final amount that she spent. And it says each. The word each can mean both multiplication and division. Now, it also says that she bought the same book for her friends. So I'm buying the same book. I'm buying 3 of the same books. And I'm going to use B to represent books. So the book times I'm purchasing it 3 different times. or 3 times at the moment. And it's going to be, so 3 times B equals 78. 3 times how much the book cost equals the $78 that she spent. Draw my river, box in my variable. I'm already multiplying by 3, so I'm going to divide by 3. Right? This right here would technically give me 1, but because it's my variable, there's always an invisible 1 in front of it. So this is going to give me, I'm not big brain enough right now to do this in my head, 26. So 78 divided by 3. So each of those books cost $26. All right. All right, this is a good one. On Monday, 305 students went on a trip to the zoo. All 5 buses they reserved were filled to capacity. How many students were in each bus? There we go, with the same thing, bus again. So there's a total of 305 students across all 5 buses. Wow, why did I draw that oh so big? All right, so if I take the 5 buses times, actually, man, I shouldn't have done that. I'm going to do S. How many students are inside of it? That's a S, not a 5. So 5 times 5 buses times the amount of students that are in each bus equals 305 students total. Draw my river, box up my variable. I'm left with times 5. So I'm going to do the opposite. Divide it by 5. Divide both sides by 5. Cancel the 5 on this side out so that the variable is left by itself. And then over here, 305 divided by 5. And that is going to give me 61. So my final answer is 61. Now, again, y'all are big brain enough to be able to figure it out on your own, but it's important that we are able to figure out the equation that matches it, right? What equation could we use to represent it? Because that's going to be a part of your assignment. All right. Let's do this last one. It says, after eating at a restaurant, Sally, Keith, and Sam decided to divide the bill evenly. Divide. It already says it right there. So I'm going to go ahead and put a division symbol here and my equal sign here. If each, right, that lets me know that it's division again. If each person paid $13, what was the total of the bill? So $13 was how much each person paid. And I know that if they're dividing it, I don't have a number and I don't have a variable. I'm going to put B for the bill. But what number am I going to put down here? Because it doesn't say a number, right? It actually does. It tells me Sally, Keith, and Sam. So it tells me that 3 people, right? 3 people split the bill evenly amongst all 3 of them. So I'm going to draw my river, box up my variable. I'm left with divided by 3. So instead I'm going to do times 3. Ooh, that was messed up. Wow, even more messed up. Jeez. All right. Goodness. I'm definitely taking a nap after this because I'm struggling here. All right, so 13 times 3, that's going to give me 39. So that means the bill was $39. And again, we're just really looking at some of those keywords that let me know what type of operation it's going to be. And also any words that indicate what the final amount is. So like, what is the number that's going to go by itself on the other side of the equal sign? And if it says like, hey, they paid $13, or like what was, in this case, it says like, what was the total of the bill? That's kind of what we're trying to find out. But with most of the problems, this one's probably a little bit harder to figure out which number is going to go over here. But it's also, this is the only number that we talk about. This is the only number that's mentioned. It mentions the 3 people, but you got to be big brain to be able to, pull that apart that you're actually going to be dividing by 3 because it mentions 3 people. All right. Good luck on the assignments. Hit me up if you guys need help. Peace.